Welcome back, students. We are in the final video for Modular 7, Poverty, Income Assistance, and Homelessness. As I said in the very first video, we're not going to cover homelessness in this particular modular, but that we'll address it in the next one. So we're going to continue with our discussion about strategies for addressing poverty. In our last video, at the very end, we were talking about the programs that are specifically intended to assist folks who are in need of income assistance. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into those programs now. Let me make a small adjustment here. Okay. So the first program that we want to talk about, previously known as Aid to Families with Dependent Children, AFDC, and recalibrated and reorganized under the Clinton administration and is now identified as Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or TANF. So this is a public assistance program that provides cash assistance to families. The primary recipient of TANF funds are often single-parent women with children in need because of the loss of financial support as a result of death, so a death of the partner, disability, either on the part of the husband or wife, or the continued absence of a second parent from the home. The four purposes of the TANF program are to aid needy families so that children can be cared for in their own homes or in the homes of relatives, and the dependence of needy parents by promoting job preparedness, work, and marriage, prevent and reduce the incidence of out-of-wedlock pregnancies, and encourage the formation and maintenance of two-parent families. So I think this is an excellent example when you take a look at these four purposes of the TANF program to see that the values that are being expressed by these purposes. This is the reason for the TANF program to exist. This is the reason that funds have been allocated to the TANF program. And behind the program are the values or philosophies that the federal government and the individuals who were in power in terms of Congress and the presidency were really advocating that these are values that we want to uphold. So one of the values, obviously, that they felt were important was that out-of-wedlock pregnancies were something that needed to be avoided. That the best type of unit in order to raise children and to be able to remain out of poverty or emerge out of poverty is to be a two-parent household. Another value was it's a good thing to be employed and to be able to be prepared for work and to work, and also to be prepared for marriage. And it was important that children needed to be cared for in their own homes. So again, I just want to emphasize, because I think this is so important and it's such a great example of the way that policy drives program and the values that a country or a community hold drive what those programs look like. So assistance is available on a time-limited basis. This is continuing with the presentation on TANF, and requires participation in programs that prepare adults in the family for participation in the workforce. Again, it replaced AFDC, was reauthorized in 2006, and had some additional priorities that were added. It strengthened the federal and state partnership, maintained self-sufficiency through work and additional constructive activities, promote child well-being and healthy marriages, encouraged abstinence and prevented teen pregnancy, improved program performance, enhanced child support enforcement, and reformed food stamps to promote work. So, for instance, one of the programs that emerged out of the TANF program was actually a teen pregnancy prevention program that was implemented throughout the country. So again, the idea, if you go back to this idea of out-of-wedlock pregnancies, they put their money where they wanted their efforts to occur, and that was to encourage abstinence and prevent teen pregnancy. So again, great example of values lead to program, lead to funding, lead to implementation. So the next program we want to talk about is what's referred to as general assistance or general relief, often referred to as GR. This is often a state or a local public assistance initiative. So there are not federal funds that are tied to the general assistance or general relief program. The general relief program is usually administered by counties and local governments. Like I said, no federal funds are involved. It's furnished to needy people and to those with disabilities who are ineligible for federal categorical programs. Eligibility criteria and benefit levels vary by state and often within states. Payments generally are limited and for a short duration, and benefits range from cash payments to groceries and shelter. So I think one of the key points here is that general relief is often used as a way of being able to support people who are ineligible for federal categorical programs. So when you think about TANF, I think the thing that most people recognize is it's primarily a program for women and their children. So if you are a male and single and have no family that you are needing to support, the availability for relief for income assistance is very, very limited. And really the only program that may be available to you in your community is GR. So, so that's one way to think about GR. It's never very much money. Sometimes it's not even money. Sometimes it's just groceries. But it is at least an option for people who don't seem to qualify for any of the other programs that are available. So we want to talk now about the Supplemental Security Income Program. So this is another public assistance program. So we've talked about TANF, we've talked about general relief. Now we're going to talk about the Supplemental Security Income Program. So as part of the Social Security Act of 1935, federal state programs were enacted for old age assistance and aid to the blind. Aid to individuals with permanent and total disabilities was added in 1950. But then in 1974, the federal administration or the federal government administered supplemental security income, what we call SSI, and that program replaced these state administered programs. SSI provides minimal national monthly cash payments to needy persons who are aged, blind, or disabled. People with disabilities have become the primary recipients of SSI, viewed as the deserving poor. Remember that from Modular 1. In 2014, the latest year for which national statistics are available, disability benefits were paid to nearly 8.4 million people, totaling some $56 billion. The standard benefit rate for SSI is $771 a month. Although most folks don't get that much, the average SSI benefit paid to eligible recipients is $535.88 monthly. So just to review, SSI previously was part of the Social Security Act, then it became its own program administered by the federal government. It's a check that people get once a month. It's certainly not going to be something that somebody's going to get rich off of. but it is intended to try to support those who are aged, blind, or disabled. So let's talk a little bit about the aged piece, because I think it's important to distinguish this. So if you have been, and if you find yourself as an older adult who never quite earned enough money to be able to qualify for Social Security, maybe you didn't work very consistently. With Social Security, you have to have a certain number of years of paying into Social Security before you become eligible to start withdrawing it. So if your work experience was not consistent, if you for whatever reason didn't work as much as maybe somebody else, you may not have paid into Social Security enough. Therefore, you're not going to be able to withdraw benefits. Therefore, SSI may be an alternative in terms of not being able to withdraw Social Security. And then obviously for people who are blind or disabled. So the final line of defense against poverty is a complex system of in-kind benefits and tax credits, the most significant of which is the Earned Income Tax Credit. So the EITC has become the largest public assistance program in the United States. This is the largest public assistance program in the United States. Passed in 1975, expanded in 96. It's grown from a small program to one that provides more Americans with more cash than any other public welfare program. So the way this works is that it's a benefit program for working people. So you have to be working in order to qualify, but you're a working person who has a very low or moderate income. To qualify, a person must meet certain requirements. You have to file a tax return. This is the way this works, even if you do not owe any taxes or are not even required to file. EITC reduces the amount of tax a person might owe and may give them a refund. Because it is an earned income tax credit, poor people outside the labor force receive no benefit. The idea is to encourage work and to reduce the regressive impact of the Social Security tax. So in other words, if you're a person who's working, but you are not making enough money to even have to file a tax return, or you know you're not going to have to owe any taxes, it gives you a tax credit. So if you understand, how you file income tax, you get credits for certain things that you've done or certain purchases that you've made. And that chips away at your tax burden. So you may owe $1,000 in taxes, but because you put on a new solar roof, or you, paid interest on a loan, or did some kind of other effort, each of those things chips away at that tax burden that you have. And what this does is it actually gives you an additional credit that people who make more money than you aren't eligible for. So you have to be working, you have to be making a very low income as a working person. You get this tax credit, and if, say, the tax credit is $700 and your tax liability is $200, you're getting a free $500 because of the EITC, Earned Income Tax Credit. Again, largest public assistance program in the United States. Here's just a quick review of some other types of benefits. We've talked a little bit about SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. This is obviously what we typically know as food stamps. Can only be used for food items. There's a lot of things you can't buy with food stamps or with SNAP benefits. Most states have replaced the paper food stamps with an online debit card or an offline smart card embedded with a computer chip. So I think that was a really smart idea. I think when I worked with people who were using the coupons, as we used to refer to them. When people went out and did grocery shopping and they were using those coupons, it was quite obvious to the other people who were, in line with them at the store, or maybe even the person who was checking them out, that, oh, this is a person who's on food stamps. Now, when you see somebody who uses the debit card for their SNAP benefits, quite frankly, you can't tell whether it's is it just a bank debit card? Is it a credit card? So the stigma that might be associated with using some kind of a SNAP benefit, I think, is significantly reduced when you are able to use this kind of debit card as opposed to having to use the coupons that we used to have people use. So again, going back, we're going to just do a couple of slides on this, but I did want to make sure that we covered this piece. Basic political perspective. The authors talk about Gilbert and Terrell that are proposing two basic political perspectives on American social welfare policy. They talk about two particular perspectives, the individualistic perspective and the collectivist perspective. So the authors argue that the market economy supports the individualistic perspective, which believes that a person's experiencing poverty are the result of the bad choices they've made, personal dysfunction, and an ongoing culture of poverty. So again, we go back to something that we talked about earlier on in the semester, that this is the shame and the blaming of the fact that you're poor because you've made bad choices, you're not smart enough, you're not ambitious enough, you don't know how to work effectively, and that's why we have to provide public assistance to you. In essence, this perspective blames the victims for the situations they are in, even though they may have had no choice in the matter, such as when children are born into poverty. The primary social policy response to the individualistic perspective is to minimize government programs and support in addressing issues relative to poverty and provide only a minimum safety net for the poor. So the idea is, hey, if they created this experience for themselves, if they've created this situation for themselves, why should we be giving them any kind of benefits? Because if they were just a little smarter or a little more ambitious or a little more willing to go out and get a job, then we wouldn't have to be providing that. So while it's not necessarily a perspective that I agree with, it is important to recognize that it is a perspective that some folks have that are setting policy in the federal government, state, and local governments. The alternative to the individualistic perspective is the collectivist perspective, which believes that social problems reflect fundamental socioeconomic circumstances, barriers to accessing resources, and lack of opportunity. Sorry, guys, I don't know, my throat is so dry. Okay. The primary social policy response is to work to ensure everyone has the same opportunity for employment and economic security. So we want everyone to have access to the resources that are available. The concept of social justice, economic justice, which we've talked about before, are easy to comprehend but difficult to achieve unless members of society are committed to spreading the wealth and power held by so few to everyone else. Despite a long history of efforts to eradicate poverty in this country, poverty is still one of the most significant social problems and is at the core of a host of other social problems in the United States today. So this really says that it's much broader than just your individual responsibility to be able to make a living. That again, it has a lot to do with everything that we've been talking about throughout this whole lecture. It has a lot to do with what the economy is like in the community that you're living in. What are the job opportunities? Can you get the training that you need in order to be able to get a good job? What are your issues around childcare and transportation? Those are all issues that need to be addressed in order for people to be successful in terms of re-entering into the workforce and being able to, provide resources for their families. We want to wrap up this section by talking specifically about children. The latest efforts to reform welfare, TANF, has resulted in the growth in the rank of the American underclass. The authors cite two researchers that define the underclass as the lowest socioeconomic group in society characterized by chronic poverty. By chronic poverty, what we mean is that members are poor regardless of the economic circumstances of the society at large. So in other words, their definition of the underclass are those that even when the economy is going well, we still have people who are living in poverty. These individuals are unable to rise above their situation, even if the society in which they live enjoys a sustained level of prosperity. There's evidence of both positive and negative effects on children whose families are part of a welfare reform program. So about 16 million children are living at or below the official poverty level. Child poverty is most prevalent among the very young and among populations at risk, such as African Americans and Latino youth. About 1 in 10 of all children living in the United States in 2018 were living without health insurance coverage of any kind. And these figures increase when you begin to talk about children of color. And the United States has the second worst record among industrialized nations in reducing the poverty of children. Researchers agree that the following factors relate to poverty that have a detrimental effect on children. So these are, when you think about a child who's living in poverty and their opportunity to be able to succeed in school, to avoid a juvenile justice system, to remain physically healthy, to remain emotionally and mentally healthy. These are the challenges that they have as a result of the fact that they are living in poverty. Stress and conflict related to low income can undermine the strength of the family. Learning opportunities at home are limited. You may have, families that are working poor, so parents are both working, and in some situations, maybe both parents have two jobs. And so the opportunity for them to be at home with their children to help support them in their homework and those kinds of things may be very limited. Childcare is of low quality. Nutrition is poor. Housing is inadequate. There's increased homelessness. Transportation options are fewer. The family is more isolated. And elevated levels of stress hormones in the brain may interfere with early brain development in some children. If you're living in poverty and you're a child and you're not quite sure whether dinner is going to be on the table that night or whether next week you're going to have to find someplace else to live, that is going to release these stress hormones in the brain that, again, may interfere with early brain development in some children. So in conclusion, poverty is a complex problem with no easy solutions, and efforts continue to be identified to solve the various issues that are involved. Although numerous public programs to eradicate poverty have been implemented over time, none have been totally successful in eliminating the problem. There is still a tremendous difference in public opinion and the government's approach to eliminating poverty in the United States. There seems to be a variety of ideas and theories as to what will finally be the solution to the situation of poverty. However, the fundamental purpose of anti-poverty programs is at the heart of the debate regarding efforts and direction of the government to address poverty. And as you can see, we have not been incredibly successful in terms of trying to address it when you look at the statistics. So that is Modular 7. Please now proceed into taking a look at the other videos, working on the discussion board, and completing the quiz. I hope if you have any questions and want to look over the material for Modular 7, if you have any questions, feel free to join us for office hours every Tuesday at 6 o'clock on Zoom. And if you look at the announcements, you'll find the contact information for that particular meeting. In the meantime, I hope you have a good day or good evening, and I will talk with you soon.